Hey everyone, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 4-episode series with Dr. Mitch Sutton, a chiropractor and the founder of Reclaim Health. Dr. Mitch is a powerhouse of knowledge. You're going to learn that in these 4 episodes, as he specializes in not only the nervous system, but also immune dysfunction, barrier permeability, which is like the gut and the brain-blood barrier connection, mold toxicity, eczema, allergies, asthma, autoimmune, and neurodegenerative disorders. Using advanced testing and targeted support, Dr. Mitch helps patients truly connect the dots of their health in order to understand how their body is actually functioning so they can stop guessing and they can actually start healing. And when he's not helping patients reclaim their health, he is a husband and a dad of 2 girls. We are really excited to introduce him to you now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. We are super excited for Dr. Mitch to join us today. Welcome, Dr. Mitch.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
We are really excited about these episodes. We're going to be talking, I'm excited because we're going to be getting a little sciencey, but I've also seen you're really good on social media. I've seen some of your posts about you are an expert at diving into these deep topics, but like keeping it easy for people to understand. So I think our listeners are going to just love all 4 of these episodes. Of course, though, for those of you listening, we always like to start by getting to know our new guest in a series. And so, Dr. Mitch, you shared a fun fact that you know how to knit. So tell us how you developed this skill, and are you currently doing anything with it?
Yeah. This was, God, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe now. I was actually in chiropractic school, and so towards the end of school, you have internships that you have to do, kind of just like, okay, what's a functioning clinic look like? You go through here. And there was a knitting store that somebody's mom actually ran, and there was this knitting class, bunch of old ladies, and all of a sudden, like, oh, okay, now I started knitting. But also there was this piece of, I enjoy new skills. Okay, this is something new, something I haven't done before. And how can I also just use this in like helping my brain, basically? I do scarves, blankets, and hats.
You do. That is so fun.
So I knit my niece and nephew and my kids. I made a couple hats. Like I made my mother-in-law some like boot leg warmer things. I don't know how to fix screw ups. So like if I mess up, like we start over and all right, then we just go from there.
I kind of wish that we had prepared for those who enjoy watching our podcast on video. Now that we're on video, I wish you could like be holding some up.
Yeah.
Some of your
actually one of the biggest things. Like so I like scarves. Okay. You know how you usually, you make the loop and then you tuck it in underneath here. And like with men's scarves, they're always so short and they're always just this like thing just shoving in your face. And I was like, I just need a longer one. So I made one that I like. And
That's awesome.
especially I went to my undergraduate was in North Dakota and in a school in Minnesota. It's cold. And wearing something around your neck in the winter just helps. And I wanted something that was a little more substantial.
So you fixed your own problem. Look at you. You're just like a problem solver. I love it. Well, let's also jump into your story a bit. I want to hear about how you got interested in chiropractic in the first place, but you're not, I don't even want to say it like this, but you're not just a chiropractor. Like you go way above and beyond in your knowledge and your education. And so tell us about your journey in the beginning, but also how you found this passion of really diving into these more complex topics.
Yeah. So I wanted to be a chiropractor since I was like 10 years old. Growing up, my mom, how do I say that? My mom's a very earthy chick. I was been getting adjusted since I was 2 months old, but I remember one day she did something to her back or whatever happened. And we went into the chiropractor, right? And after the adjustment, I just saw the look of relief on her face. And I was like, this is kind of cool. Helping somebody get out of pain with not any other tools other than just your touch or your hands, and just helping make sure that things work in the appropriate way. And I was an athlete growing up, baseball, basketball, football, track, and there's very much like, okay, how do I make my body work as effectively as possible? And that's where it just kind of evolved into, knowing more about how everything works. Like I said, I played football in college, and you get smashed, right? You take hits and you're going to be a little off. Just making sure, trying to stay away from injury and things of that nature. And then continuing, I'll say through after chiropractic school, then seeing there are some other pieces of this that are very much what the original chiropractic philosophy is. And the original chiropractic philosophy is that they call them the 3 T's, like it's traumas, toxins, thoughts. These are all things that create damage, stress, inflammation, whatever word that you want to put to it. And the adjusting side of things is more so the trauma aspect. But also, too, we are surrounded by just junk. The toxic load that we have now is substantially higher than it was 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. And it's also how your body deals with those things and what you can do to help support, strengthen, and make sure that your body's ability to not only eliminate the toxin, but also to recover from some of that stuff is also where, you call it the functional medicine side of things, or where you do other tests and supplementation and understanding what chronic disease is, because that's more so where a lot of the toxin piece comes from. And then also the thought process is just, or I'll say the thought T in this too is just the stress load, and also technically what cortisol and that mental stress actually like truly really does in the body, and how that affects other tissues as well too, which is all the part of where people have chronic issues. And then just which one is it for each person, and trying to figure out, understand, okay, is it this piece, is it this piece, is it this piece, like what's your primary thing that's really kind of kicking the crap out of you.
Yeah. And today we're going to be talking about the barrier dysfunction that a lot of people are experiencing. In another episode, we're going to be talking more about mold and these other things that in our environment, like you're saying, that can affect us. But is this something where you've like sought out additional certifications? You've just dived into your own type of research? Or are these things that are taught in chiropractic school? How
These,
have you
yeah,
taken? Yeah.
these are not taught in school. And this is like, obviously school is important, and getting your certifications right and passing your board exams, and making sure that you have all of the appropriate information to move forward with all of that. Yes. There's also times too where like schools kind of just jumping through hoops to pass tests and get things right. There's a lot more information that's out there, and there's a lot of up and coming stuff and things that like weren't available at the time, but it's, I'll say, more self-taught, I guess, if you will. There's other online classes that you take, and you can get certifications in XYZ and all that kind of stuff. But I don't like to, I have all this. I don't
Right.
have alphabet
Yeah.
soup behind my name,
I
which
think what's cool though is that your knowledge shows just your passion and your interest behind this stuff. And so you're just super interested in learning more about it, which to me is like amazing, because if I'm going to be going to see someone who's in wellness, especially like a chiropractor, I want to know that they're not just going to like snap, crackle, pop me in 5 minutes and I'm in and I'm out and kind of a number. You really dive deep into these and you're really listening when people are talking about symptoms and all this other stuff. And so let's dive into our first topic. We're going to be talking about barrier dysfunction in this episode. Let's just start by defining that. What is barrier dysfunction?
okay, a barrier. And this is very much just like immune system based. Okay. There are parts of your body that are an essential piece of how your immune system operates that has nothing to do with white blood cells. And so that's everywhere that you're exposed to the environment. It's your skin, it's your sinuses, your airway, your digestive system, your urinary tract. Like technically, those are all areas where you can get exposed to things that are not like actually circulating through your bloodstream yet. The food that we eat is still environment. Your whole digestive tube is still technically like not inside your body, but it's inside your body, yes. But those are all areas where you have this extra layer of, I'll say, protection that keeps your body working correctly in order to make sure that opportunistic infections, or things that we breathe and eat and drink, there's always stuff on it. Nothing's 100% clean. And so how do those tissues and how do those barriers appropriately work in order to make sure that you can maintain like normal health?
So are we talking about like
And
the blood-brain barrier, or like the gut
that's
barrier, or all of them? Or tell us more about like where are we talking about?
they're all kind of the same. Okay. Like your intestinal barrier is the exact same tissue as your blood brain barrier. And this is where, the whole like gut brain connection and all of those pieces. And there's a lot more to that than that. But when you have dysfunction and there's permeability, more so it has a lot more to do with what's going on inside the digestive tract. Because that's, you always talk about where, oh, it's the majority of our immune system resides. Like your immune system's everywhere. It's every single organ, cell, tissue. Majority of the time, that's where people beat it up, is inside that digestive tract, because you can't see it. You don't know what's actually happening. Yes, there's people that have digestive system dysfunctions, right? If it's constipation, or if it's diarrhea, if it's gas, or it's bloating. Those are all, yes, you have a digestive system issue, but more importantly, it's anytime I look at any stool test or like a gut permeability test, what you're really looking for is what's creating damage to immune system in that barrier. And there's, like, in all those barriers, there's three parts to it. There's your chemical barrier, there's your biological barrier, and then there's the physical tissue barrier itself. Your skin's technically a little bit acidic, okay? Because the pH of those areas, that chemical barrier, is also what makes sure that any dysbiotic or like bad bacteria or things of that nature aren't able to live in that environment. And only you're able to have the normal, like the healthy flora that's on your skin. It's the same thing inside your digestive system. Your stomach is acidic for a reason, right? Because yes, it breaks down protein, right, and denatures it, but also it kills stuff, it sterilizes. And so the acidity of the stomach and helps stimulate pancreatic function, helps stimulate liver enzymes, bile secretion, which again, all great at helping to break down food, but also have great antimicrobial properties to it. And that's what truly keeps your normal gut flora working and keeping it corralled and keeping it in check. Because this is a great example. People that get strep throat, okay, reoccurring strep throat. If all of us shook our skin cells and grew it on a petri dish, you would see all of these different types of bacteria. So why does it actually like create a infection in some people and not in others? And yep, you take your antibiotic, great, gets rid of it, but it comes back. And then you do the same thing, round and around we go. Okay, another round of antibiotics, goes away, comes back. Because it has nothing to do with, like, I mean, yes, the bacteria is important in this, but it has to do because that barrier is allowing that infection to grow in that environment. And so if you don't have the right chemical antimicrobial properties that are keeping that stuff out, then this is where you're going to be constantly, like, your walls are down, you're exposed, and things can freely kind of come in and come out and do as they please. And every single living organism wants to grow and live and survive. When you have that normal, healthy environment, then that's what's keeping all that stuff out. And then you see the chronic infections, and you see, the chronic imbalance in the gut flora, which then in turn is going to create damage to the actual physical tissue barrier inside the intestinal lining. And then you see the intestinal lining piece, and then that's where chronic inflammation that happens there. And this is where it gets a little kind of in the weeds, but there's a part of, like, you have a first line of defense immune system, your innate immune system, and then you have your adaptive. Your adaptive is what kind of brings in your heavy hitters. If you get a virus, okay, and you need some extra help, you need some extra support in order to kill some of that stuff off, that adaptive immune system is what does that. But when you have any type of barrier dysfunction, right, any permeability, whether it's in the lung tissue, the sinus cavity, or like a digestive tract, right, that kind of tilts the scale. There's a specific part, it's called there's a Th1 and Th2, they're called T helper cells, right? These T helper cells are kind of the immune coordinators. Barrier issues stimulate more something called a Th2 immune response, which that increases these things called mast cells and eosinophils, which these are just the like reactive side of things. People have mast cell activation or eosinophil esophagitis. All that means is just that part of immune system is stimulated and inflamed, and it creates a lot of swelling. And so that's where you see the redness or the itching or the pain. Those are all your classic signs of all those things that come up. And that's truly, at the end of the day, what asthma and allergies and eczema and anything of that nature is. Just, why is that tissue constantly inflamed? And then anything you put inside that environment is just going to be more protective. Your immune system's already like, hey, we're in trouble here, we're just going to respond to everything, which is where then you're going to develop more and more sensitivities, right? Or more environmental allergies, so to speak, which then traditionally you go to your allergist and let's take a steroid, or let's, shove down this inflammation. Let's, antihistamines, things of that nature. But like, that's just the Band-Aid. You're not actually resolving the issue of why that inflammation is there in the first place. And this is also something that they don't tell you, but like a chronic steroid use is also technically what tips that scale to be even more Th2 dominant, because that shoves down, like, this is also too why people get, you see people get sick after an intense period of stress, because that steroid, which that's what cortisone are, push down something called your Th1, which is your pathogen fighting side of things. Your ability to kill off stuff also doesn't work as well, which the Th1 Th2 balance is just a teeter-totter. And so if this is elevated, the other one decreases and just leaves you more vulnerable for other opportunistic infections. And then around and around and around you go, and you kind of just get stuck in this inflamed loop.
So is this where you kind of start with people? Because I feel like a lot of symptoms are come from this, because what you're saying is it you're talking about your entire body. I mean, you're not just talking gut, you're talking brain, you're talking skin, all that stuff. How do you approach this? Because it just seems like that's a lot, but it also seems like it also can be very, I don't know, like,
Yeah, and I say this, your body is incredibly complex, but it's not complicated.
yeah, that's a
Right?
great way
Like,
of saying that.
yeah, it's because every single one of those barriers is all the same barrier. It's all the same immune system response. And I don't know this for sure, but like, why somebody has eczema rather than asthma, right? Why somebody has digestive issues rather than chronic sinus issues. When I look at it and somebody tells me that, okay, this is what I'm dealing with, I'm immediately like, okay, what's going on with the barrier? What's going on of why things are shifting that immune system in that direction, and where it shows up in each person? I couldn't tell you that, but I could tell you what's creating it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You talked in the beginning about the 3 Ts, and these are things that people are all going to be struggling with. And so is it possible to even live with a well-functioning barrier at all times, or is this just like a constant battle? And then how, for someone like you who is super aware of this, what are you doing to make sure that your barrier is functioning at an optimal level?
Yeah. I mean, everybody is always going to be bombarded by stuff. There's no getting around that. And there's also like what to do to help maintain, and some of the simple things that are going to keep those barriers maintained, right? And keep them healthy. I mean, just making sure acidity is stimulated, which is, okay, making sure you drink some lemon water, making sure that you do some apple cider vinegar. There are such simple things that are at home that you can do on a regular basis that's going to make sure that things are maintained appropriately. Aloe vera juice. When you get a sunburn, what do you put on your skin? Your skin cell is technically, it's the exact same cell that is the intestinal cell. And so aloe vera juice also is very soothing, very calming, and actually helps to regenerate collagen production, which is what pulls together your intestinal cells. That's why, like, that's a main part of what holds some of that stuff together.
And side note on that, like, do you have to buy aloe vera juice, or can you use like an aloe vera plant to make your own kind? Like, how
I
do
mean, you
you?
could,
Just
if
curious.
you can want to go full on, make it yourself. It's the same thing. It's the same thing,
Okay,
right? But like the juice is, I think it's like $10 at a grocery store.
I just have a
And
lot of aloe vera plants that I don't use all the
yeah,
time. So, all
I
right, I'm
mean,
looking
that's
this
what you
up.
use them for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you use them
Huh.
for, because that's
Okay.
now technically too aloe's a slight laxative, right? So it also just kind of helps bowel movement stuff move and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, like, one of the biggest things that I see all the time is truly like people don't have the appropriate amount of normal stomach function. And acidity level drops. Like, technically what acid reflux or like indigestion, things of that nature, is not an issue of having too much stomach acid. It's an issue of too little. It's called hypochlorhydria. Now, normally your stomach should fully be filled. Normal physiological function is that there's a full level of acidity inside the stomach. And so, like, saying that you overproduce stomach acidity doesn't really make sense. But you have this, like, in your esophagus, right? Like, you have this little sphincter. It's more so it's like a flap. And when you don't have the enough water, enough fluid, enough acidity that's pushing up underneath against it, because that flap then closes off everything that's going inside the esophagus. But if there's no reverse pressure or negative, whatever that is, right? Like then that flap kind of hangs there, and then that's where you can see stuff freely kind of go into the esophagus. The reason why that the acid doesn't chew away at your stomach is because you have this protective mucous membrane, and this membrane is stimulated by the level of acidity. So when that level drops, then that protective mucous membrane also drops, and it's a washing machine. What happens when you don't put enough water inside a washing machine? Your clothes don't get cleaned, and sometimes that washing machine's on the other side of the room. It's the same thing with the level of acid, right? Because if that food bolus is in there and that stomach's churning, then you're sloshing that acidity around, and it hits that area where that protective mucous membrane's no longer there. And that's like what heartburn is, because you're irritating the tissue because that protective barrier is not there to support that.
So a good place to start for people, because what I'm hearing is a lot of people have low acid, like low stomach acid, would be
Yeah.
maybe
Like a majority of people that I see is very much like, yes, what's your stomach doing? And there's also some of these like questions that I ask people that also kind of show that. Um, if you bloat like right after you eat, right? That's a kind of a major thing that says, okay, what's not breaking down the food appropriately, and why is there irritation that's happening inside that system? If there's any weird lightheaded or dizziness, especially in a change of position, or any weird like numbness, tingling in your hands and feet, and you talk about methylation and B vitamins and all that kind of jazz, but like you need normal stomach acidity to produce this thing called intrinsic factor, which is used to make sure that you can absorb B vitamin appropriately inside the GI. So also two people that take B12 supplements orally, if you don't have appropriate stomach function, then you're not really even absorbing the appropriate amount, which that then helps your your red blood cells carry oxygen. And if you don't have enough oxygen, and especially in a transitional state, then your body's got to like pump harder and carry more. And sometimes you get lightheaded and dizzy because you just don't have enough oxygen going to your brain. But then too, right, B12 is important to rebuild something called myelin sheath, which is the coating of your nerves. And so if you're deficient in that, then that's where also like you get the weird numbness, tingling, nerve response that also happens as well too.
Is there a way to test for how your barrier permeability is?
Yeah.
If you, because what I'm kind of hearing you say is pretty much any of these symptoms, allergies, eczema, like skin issues, bloating, like all of this stuff is all related. We're all one big kinetic chain, and so it's all related. But if somebody comes in and they're having symptoms, how do we know what level they're at? Or maybe like is it kind of a once, I don't want to say one size fits all, but like could everybody be using aloe vera and lemon juice and stuff like that? Like, how do you test for this?
For the most part, yes. Like those are all just like helpful, beneficial things that are gonna just make sure that those barriers stay healthy and are maintained. There's two tests that I like to use. Like right? Like a stool test, honestly, it's fantastic. It is. Like you think about, yes, you're collecting your poop, but what that shows is, okay, what part of the immune system is not working appropriately? What type of imbalance gut bacteria is going to show you stomach acidity, pancreatic function, bile secretion, all of that chemical barrier side of things. But also there's inflammatory markers that are in there that show, okay, there's a marker, it's called calprotectin, that literally just means that your intestinal cells are exploding. That's where that inflammation comes from, which then is like, okay, you definitely have some barrier permeability issues here. Now, there's also a blood test that is neat because there's three different markers, but three different subgroups of each of those markers. So it kind of tells you if it's acute or if it's a chronic issue, but also like what part of that barrier is, or I'll say what thing is actually creating damage to that barrier. There's one that's called lipopolysaccharide, which is the infectious gram-negative bacteria, right? The stuff that we don't want to have. Then there's the occludin and zonulin, which is like the full-on like leaky gut piece of it. And then there's also something that's called actomycin, that each one kind of shows how that intestinal cell is breaking apart. Actomycin's a big, like gluten's a big thing that does that one. It basically like rips apart the intestinal barrier, not at the junction. That's a different piece, which then tells you it's like, okay, this cell needs a little bit extra resources in this way. But those are all of those pieces that can help you, like, this is where the damage is happening. And then once you know, like, hey, this is the issue, then it's like, okay, it's either this one, or this one that's creating that issue. And then you go from there.
Okay. Man, I feel like you have touched on 25 things where I'm like, we need a whole episode on that.
And this is, I know it's a lot. And like, I enjoy taking the time though to actually show people what this is and like educate them and understand this is actually why you're having this issue. And it's truly, that's where the name came from, of like, you're reclaiming your health, because so many people, why is this happening? And somebody just told me this, this, and this. But like, if you can empower people to like, hey, this is what you need to do so that you know what's actually going on inside your body. That's where I've had the best results are because the patient understands, well, this is why I'm doing these things, and this is the direction that we're going, because this is why my body's acting the way it is.
Yeah. Well, I do have one kind of side question before we finish this episode is a lot of people are doing food sensitivity testing nowadays. And obviously there's an anaphylactic, like I'm allergic to peanuts type reaction, but then a lot of people are doing food sensitivity testing. We've done this for a couple people in my family. My husband's results came back with chicken, eggs, and dairy. My son, who I thought would come back with dairy because he has very much of his dad's genes, came back with white beans and pineapple. Are these food sensitivity things that people should, like, is it causing internal inflammation? Is it something people really should be avoiding? Is it short term? Is it more like if you can fix the permeability in your gut lining, like they shouldn't be an issue?
There you go. Yeah. Like, so I used to, right? Like, I used to run a bunch of food tests and had great results in some of those pieces, but also, you know, people still had the same issue. And sometimes if you rerun a food test and like all of those foods change, right? Because you pulled them out of the system, you're not exposing the body to it. But then you retest and you still have technically like the same number of foods, they're just completely different foods,
Hmm.
which, like, you're going to feel better in the first, 2, 3, 4 months because you're just reducing some of that initial inflammatory response. But like, did you solve the real issue of why that showed up in the first place? Because when you look at a food test, or how I look at it, it's an immune system test at the end of the day. That's what an IgG or an IgE or an IgA, IgM, right? Those are all the immunoglobulins that some of these test for. And it's more so it's the IgG piece. But, running into some of my own issues with that, of like, well, if this was the end all be all say all of everything, like, why is somebody still having these issues? And why are some of these foods still reoccurring? Which there's actually, it's a neat study that's out there that, like, technically, and again, like, I'm not, like, food tests are great, but they don't solve the problem, because if you run a food test and you don't have another like barrier permeability test to it, then it kind of is a moot point, because you don't know which piece is actually creating the problem of why your body is responding to some of those foods in the first place.
Okay, that is helpful.
It's really
So
interesting.
you mentioned the aloe vera, you mentioned apple cider vinegar and lemon juice. Kind of a two-part question, answer it how you want. But what are some other like quick tips that people can start doing in their home? And or what are your like non-negotiables? What are you doing?
I mean, honestly, just it's whole food at the end of the day. Just eat real food, and even like my wife, she makes her own sourdough. We do dairy, and it's more so making sure that, because it's never the food, right? It's not the food. It's what's been done to the food. And depending on where the source is, if you try and find, something that's grass fed, grass finished, organic, you get the you didn't mess with it. It's not processed through all these things, because that technically, like, that processing is what destroys and doesn't allow your body to recognize what that used to be, which your body is basically, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Super black and white. And so a lot of those foods, because of its molecular structure that's changed over time because of these chemical processing that's happened to them, that's where you see a lot of these low level of irritation that, like, every day it's not substantial, it's a little chip, but like over time all of those little chips add up, and they're like, well, I haven't changed anything, so why do I feel this way, right? Because it's more so the damage that's happened over time of your body not able to put itself back together from some of those things. So like whole food stuff is important at the end of the day, like 100%. But like, am I going to tell you that obviously we go have pizza and do things like 100%, but it's also the piece of, do I do the things to like protect my body from when I know I'm going to do something stupid that's going to hurt it? Yes. And I'm no different from anybody else. It's just, I just know how to fix it. But also like, I enjoy teaching people like, okay, if you're going to go do these things, you make sure you do this, this, and this before you go do it, so it doesn't kick the crap out of you.
Okay. Well, I feel like a lot of people are going to be resonating with this episode of just like, yeah, I have some stuff going on. To be completely transparent, when you were talking about esophageal stuff, my husband struggles with that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, he'll probably be chatting with you. And so I'm sure a lot of other people are feeling the same way. So what is the best way for people to contact you? Do you do like any sort of a like free phone call or consult just to go know people to see if you're a good fit, or tell us about the process of working with you?
So there's reclaimhealthclinic.com. And there's a part where you can message if you have questions, that kind of thing. And if you leave name, number, then I give you a call and say, hey, what do you got going on? This is what we do, and kind of walk you through. Okay, then you probably need to set up a new patient appointment. And then if it's this piece or if it's this piece, then depending on what that exam and going through that appointment is, this is where we need to go in that direction is the best way.
Okay, great. Well, we have 3 more episodes coming up. We're basically going to be continuing the conversation, but next up, we're going to be talking about autoimmune disorders. In our third episode, we're going to be talking about neurodegenerative diseases and what's actually happening in the brain with those. And then in our fourth episode, we're going to be talking about mold. These are all super interesting topics, things that people are very passionate about. So we are excited to come back shortly with the next one. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.